Good afternoon, Katie. How are you today?
Hey, I'm good. It's Thursday. Thursdays are always good.
Yes, absolutely. I love Thursdays. And for those who are watching, I'm here with Katie Robinson, who is a therapist with our early childhood school-based mental health program. And Katie's great because Katie has a wide range of experience in the therapeutic space. She's currently a therapist with Thompson, but she started off with um, our PRTF, Psychiatric Residential Therapeutic Facility, as well as community-based and Polywog, which is another program that we have. So, and now she's a therapist. So, great background. And from the perspective of mental health and the importance of mental health, I wanted to have this conversation with you, Katie. Um, why is mental health so important, and why should we prioritize that for our youth?
Yeah, I love that question. I think a lot of times when we hear mental health, we kind of have these negative ideas about it. But really, mental health goes right with mental wellness. It's our ability and our kids' ability to handle things that life throws at them, their ability to bounce back from big problems, their ability to interact with others, to tackle some of those really big challenges that come. Knowing their emotions. Even as adults, it's important for us to understand our emotions. And that really is kind of the basis of mental health and mental wellness, understanding how we're feeling, why we're feeling, and then what that impacts around us, whether it's how we play with others if we're kids, how we listen to our teachers, or as adults, how we interact with each other, how we're in relationships. And I think mental health for a long time was this big scary thing. And what we're hoping to do is make it a little less scary and a little less negative.
Yeah, I think that's a great answer. I mean, really to kind of because there's been a huge stigmatization of mental health, mental wellness, mental, you say the word mental, and then like and we have to get rid of that. And the world has seen a lot of destigmatization. And I think honestly, conversations like this can greatly help. And I think the work that Thompson does probably helps as well.
Yeah.
So tell me more about like maybe some of the programs you've seen at Thompson, maybe the program you're in. Like, how do our programs kind of impact mental health, mental wellness for our kids?
Yeah, I think that really awesome thing about Thompson is we serve kiddos and families from all walks of life, and we are able to influence their interactions and relationships in schools, in their families, with their friends and communities. With our team, we work a lot with children and particularly with children and their families. So our early childhood mental health team serves kiddos from really birth to 8. I think the youngest right now is around 2. And as you can imagine, 2-year-olds like to play and they're silly, but they also express their emotions in really big ways. And our job, our role is to really help their parents understand what they're expressing, understand what they're going through and why they're going through it, and also helping their parents and caregivers and families understand their own roles and their own mental health. And I think the really cool thing is we see kiddos who really struggle with, interacting in spaces like at daycare or at school really start to grow. And we give them skills to problem solve and to tell their caregivers or teachers or parents what their needs are, and teaching parents to tune into that a little bit. And that's the big work of it, is building that relationship and that connection. Because without that connection, we can't address bigger behaviors. We can't correct things if we're not connected to our kids.
Yeah, I think that's a big part of it. I mean, a lot of times what we'll do as a society is we'll look at behavior, bad behavior, and we'll be like the causality is mental health is the root, when in actuality, what you're saying is just that relationship being more tuned in, plugged in, kind of attuned to what's going on. Um, just checking your pulse. We can use whatever saying we want, but like
Yeah.
having our finger on the pulse of like, what is our young one kind of feeling like? What are they doing? And also another thing you mentioned is as an adult, your mental health and your overall wellness is linked to that of your youth, because if they're going through it, you'll be dealing with it and going through it, and then vice versa. So I think that one of the things that I'm hearing is that not only can the youth that we serve be served, like be helped through our program, but also, as you mentioned, the family members around, the parents, you know?
Yeah, our team really works hard to help support the whole family in that therapeutic relationship and in that process. One of the awesome programs that we provide is parent child interaction therapy, and it is solely focused on first strengthening the relationship between the parent and the child, teaching the parent how to just enjoy and connect with their kid. Sometimes as parents, we get so caught up in correcting behavior. We get so overwhelmed with, oh gosh, he just won't sit still, or we just can't get him to listen, that we get frustrated, and then we get in this cycle, and sometimes that connection gets a little looser. It's just not as tight as it should be. And so with parent child interaction therapy, we really teach parents to be the play therapists themselves. They are the ones learning to connect with their kids in ways that they probably weren't doing as specifically before. And so we give them skills to build that connection, and then we give them skills for when those tough moments come, and really specific ways to tackle some of those big challenging behaviors that our kids show. Our kids don't communicate with words. They're not going to sit down and tell you they're really frustrated because you didn't cook their favorite food. They might throw the food on the floor. And we have to learn ways to communicate with them where we understand what they're telling us, what their behaviors are telling us. And we have to make sure that what our behavior is telling our kids is clear. And so it's a really neat thing to see a parent and a family transform from really kind of fighting with their kids a lot and feeling like things are just really hard, lots of tantrums, to now being able to ask that kiddo to come sit down and play, and kiddo comes and sits them down. It's just neat. That connection is powerful.
Yeah, I think that's good too. And I was listening to what you were saying, and you were talking about like our behavior as the adults, and I was like, that part. Like the part where you're talking about like our behavior may not necessarily convey what we wanted to convey. To me, that brings up a question that I was thinking in my mind is like, well, why does our behavior as adults, we're supposed to be adults, maybe not convey? So then a lot of times the thought is, well, there might be some reason, and that may have to do with past traumas that you've experienced as the adult, maybe younger when you were, either a kid or earlier in life. So then the question is, well, if that's what's really driving that, does our program, does it, school-based mental health specifically, does that address like past traumas and stuff?
Yeah, I think for a lot of us that are providing school-based mental health or outpatient at TCDC, we are really connecting in and addressing that generational trauma. So we are helping parents tune into what they've experienced. We're helping foster parents understand the connection between traumas that our children and their biological families have experienced, and helping them see how that impacts how their kiddos are viewing the world. I think we can't talk about a child or a parent without talking about the other. And we know that trauma looks different for all of us, that we all have different definitions of trauma. It impacts us all differently. But what we know ultimately is that if we can repair or strengthen that connection and relationship, then regardless of where the trauma came from, we can have healing. That's what our experiences are telling us, that we're seeing families heal. And it's what the broader experience is saying too, with research, that that one strong relationship that so many programs at Thompson help build, builds that resiliency and helps our kids to overcome some of those things and break that cycle.
Sure, I love that. Question for you. When you mention healing, that is something that we hear, and some people don't really know what does that mean? Slash, really, what does that look like? So for the first timer out there, maybe somebody who's never went through mental health, therapy, treatment, it's maybe somebody who is curious, like, well, how long is this going to go? What is this going to look like? Like, what does healing look like?
Yeah, I love that question. So I'm going to give a very therapist answer and say it looks different for everybody. But what we find is that, particularly when maybe you're a little unsure about therapy, you're not really sure what the point is, you're not sure why you should be engaging in this to support your kiddo. What we find is that slowly there's more education. We start with teaching our families about the therapeutic process, about what it could look like, whether it's through play therapy or PCIT or school based, and giving them information. And the more that our parents and caregivers are learning about how their child's emotions are, the more that caregivers learning about their own emotions. They start to see, oh, when I get really angry, I do these things, and my kiddo does too. it's amazing when you start to make those connections and you start to learn some new skills, ways to, kind of take a step back and get yourself settled. We talk about co-regulation. The calmer an adult is, the calmer a child is going to be. And so teaching those skills, and we have a lot of light bulb moments with parents where they go, oh, I really wasn't being clear with what my child needed to do, or I really didn't understand what they were upset about until we slowed down. Healing and therapy looks different for everybody, and the timeline looks different. I would say for a lot of our families, anywhere from 6 to 12 months is pretty standard. With PCIT, we say 12 to 18 sessions. And it, again, depends on each family's individual story, which is the really awesome thing about our team and a lot of our outpatient therapists is we each have different skill sets to address that.
Great. I was just writing down a couple of notes because I wanted to make sure I was able to recap for anybody who's watching. It sounds like to me, based on what you said, therapy can look like increased understanding, an increased level of skills, maybe especially for the adult, definitely also for the youth, but you both are going to come out with more understanding and more skills. And then what it can look like in terms of what you mentioned, Katie, is multiple sessions. This is probably not going to happen in one session, as well as it's going to take patience and a little bit of commitment from you. So I think if you're able to go into it with patience, commitment, and the understanding it's going to be more than 1 or 2 sessions, and it may take some time, you're going to be able to come out with greater understanding of your youth, and then also probably more skills to help you work with your youth.
Yeah. And I think the awesome thing is that it does take some time, it does take some patience, but really you start to become safe and comfortable and vulnerable. And the more that you show up, the more often you show up with the things you're struggling with or the things that your kiddo is struggling with, the more you're able to even begin problem solving on your own. And we just help guide you down that path. I think sometimes there's this assumption that we are experts or perfect or we know it all. And we're humans, and we're just humans that are showing up for other humans to help walk with them on this journey. And we just have a few extra skills to share.
Yeah, I can tell from talking with you, you have a true passion for this, and you've been committed to this for some time. So I see the commitment. Question for you, last question. If somebody is interested in getting this support for their youth and for themselves, like what's the process? What do we got to do?
Yeah, so the best thing to do, particularly for a parent or caregiver or even a youth, is to talk with their caregiver about it and reach out to us. We can complete a referral. There, you can go to the Thompson website, and there are links where you can complete that referral. Once the referral is completed, then somebody from the team reaches out to you, just gets some basic information. They're just going to ask questions like your insurance and what you might be looking for as far as therapy. And then we'll get you on a schedule. And then you'll meet with me or somebody else on our team. And we're going to ask some of those deeper questions, some of those questions about your experiences, about things you enjoy, about things that are hard. We're going to talk a little bit about different events that have happened in your life. And we're going to help to make sure that we have an understanding of exactly what you need so we can get you connected with the right therapist.
Sounds like a simple process to get on board, and it sounds like you just clearly laid it out. So for anybody who's watching, it's been a pleasure talking with you, Katie. You've given lots of information. You're so relatable. It's easy to tell a little bit more about how this program works and how we can all, really seek therapy for overall wellness. Thank you once again. I'll be talking with you soon, and I'm sure everybody has enjoyed watching this. Thank you so much, Katie.
Thank you so much.
Talk to you later. Bye-bye now.
Bye.